Well, the title does not lie. Like, do not adjust your screen or anything. Do not, wipe your eyes and check again because, yeah, this is a thing. Forbidden Cards Errata, OCG Glory of the Duelist. Now, Glory of the Duelist is some kind of special pack that OCG seems to be getting and whatnot. I don't know all the details on, like, when it'll come out and stuff like that. But the reason I'm doing a video on this is because, basically, yeah, Forbidden Cards getting Errata'd. Now, obviously, some of us know about Dark Strike Fighter, a card that was previously banned in a long time ago during like Synchro Cat format, Blackwing format, when they abused the hell, when those decks abused the hell of Dark Strike Fighter, because you would just be able to attack with everything and then synchro on up in the Dark Strike Fighter and then use this effect to launch all your monsters to inflict a lot of damage, potentially going for game in that turn. And obviously with the new Errata that Dark Strike Fighter has in OCG and the TCG now, the cards can obviously come back. Now, it's not back for the TCG just yet, but I would assume that he will come back this time around. The reason he didn't come back in the last list was because even though the Errata was done and shown before, previously, the card had not been released and the Legendary Collection 5Ds wasn't released yet. So they had no reason to put that card back yet. Because, now that the card's out in circulation and most people can get it, pretty much the card could probably come back now. But, this is a little bit different. This is a bit more intensive than, like Dark Strike Fighter or Catapult Turtle. Because, with Catapult Turtle, you used to be able to tribute as many monsters as you want to inflict damage to your opponent equal to half of the attack of the tributed monsters on the field and stuff. Now, yeah, the reason I say it's more intense is because, well, not only did we have this, but apparently we have the OCG Limited Forbidden list. This list has been kind of going around. I think it was leaked or something like that. I'm kind of leaning towards real just because I know it sounds kind of stupid, but I mean, if we start looking at this stuff, you're going to kind of understand like what's going on and why they're possibly doing this. But yeah, we have. In fact, I guess I'll go over this first, just because I mean it'll lead right up into the whole Errata thingamabobber. So newly forbidden, Heavy Storm. Yeah, freaking Heavy Storm is banned over there too. So yeah, I guess it's not just our territory getting that card banned; it's the OCG doing that as well. But just wait. I mean, this shit's gonna get crazy from here on out. So, newly limited, Chaos Emperor Dragon, Envoy of the End. Yeah, Chaos Emperor Dragon. One of the strongest cards that have ever been printed in the game is back. And you'll see why that is. Sinister Serpent. So, yeah, Sinister Serpent. I guess they find it okay now, but again, we'll see what's going on with that. Blaze Phoenix, the Burning Bombardment Bird. Basically to stop, I believe people are talking about an FTK with Elder God Nodin and Blaze Phoenix. Basically, it's to pretty much make it not work anymore, because you need at least, I think you need 3 Blaze Phoenix, and heck, a lot of these FTKs that involve Blaze Phoenix usually get out 3 of these guys and burn the opponent for game. And do all this other crazy stuff. The ones with like Black Garden and Ancient Fairy Dragon and Galaxy Tomahawk. Those FTK decks, basically 3 of these was acquired, and now that you only have 1, you can't abuse it multiple times with Fusion Gate and stuff. So, yeah, that's a thing. Senju and Manju. Now, obviously, this is because of Necros, the deck that pretty much, like, they pretty much abuse these cards to death. Like, I know some people were like, wait, do they actually use Senju? Some builds actually do run Senju, because heck, if you open like Manju or Senju and Unicore, you could go for like a rank 4 play and get some searches off at the same time for next turn. So, and I guess speaking of Unicore, Necros of Unicore is also limited because, well, Necros is doing very well over there, and I guess they hit Unicore mainly because you can abuse it with Kaleido Mirror and Herald of the Arc Light to get searches off while, you know, not using up that much of your hand. So, and plus, Unicore can pretty much get your stuff out of the grave into your hand. So if you use like Trishula, you could get it back to your hand with Necros of Unicore and stuff like that, and plus you could kind of loop it with Bryonics. So yeah, that's kind of why they did that, I guess. Instant Fusion, same reason, I guess. Elder God Nodin is a card over there, and like, I'm sorry, but I mean, I know that Instant Fusion's it was kind of silly. I mean, we've had formats where people were kind of abusing this for silly combos, you know, like in the wind-up hand loop deck. But I think Elder God Nodin pretty much sealed this card's fate to being limited, because now you can only use that once unless you bring it back with a different kind of card and stuff like that. So yeah, Temple of the Kings. Bet you didn't see that one coming. Again, we'll kind of get into why this is going on. It's part of the whole errata thing. Preparation rights, because Necros kind of hurting the consistency of the deck a bit, because yeah, 3 of these is insane in that deck. Symbol of Heritage. I believe this has to do with the Blaze Phoenix FTK. I want to say it does. That's all I can think of, because this seems to be. I remember this card is mainly used in those kind of decks where it has like a lot of loops and stuff like that and craziness. Super Poly. So they got it limited like us. So that's interesting. Harpy's Feather Duster. Yeah, Harpy's freaking Duster. Harpy's freaking Feather Duster. Yeah, so they banned Heavy Storm, and they brought back Harpy's Feather Duster. Okay. All right, well, we'll have to get into that. I don't believe this has an errata. Some people are saying that it's errata to where you must control a Harpy monster to use it. I wouldn't mind that per se, because I mean, it would just turn into a somewhat themed Heavy Storm, even though the original was banned. So I guess it's kind of like, well, you ban one and you keep bringing the other one back. I guess that's their mentality. Exchange of the Spirit. Yeah, Exchange of the Spirit. I never was around when the Exchange of the Spirit FTK existed, and I'm glad I never had to play against it. But this card has been errated too, and I'll definitely get into that. Crush Card Virus. Same with this freaking thing. Yeah, Crush Card. I mean, this card was banned for a reason a long time ago. Heck, it was arguably the strongest virus card of them all. You know, that's pretty much enough said. Ring of Destruction. Yeah, this is back too. Again, that has an errata. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot to talk about. So, yeah, this is going to be a pretty long video. But, hey, it's something that I'm actually kind of interested in talking about. New Semi-Limited. Inzektor Hornet. I guess they just want to see if Inzektor's do anything with right now with 2 Hornet. I don't know. We'll have to see. I mean, I'm kind of weary of that one, because, like, even though Inzektors haven't been, like, doing a whole lot as of late, you give them too much stuff back and they might prove to be a problem. I mean, that's kind of the problem in general. Like, when you do bring cards back, there's always a big risk. But we'll just have to see. Same with this, Atlantean Dragoons. A card that's been limited for both territories for a while now, because Mermills basically, they abused the card to death, and you could OTK and stuff like that. So it just does so much for the deck, and I guess they assume that since Mermill's not really doing anything, they'll see if putting it to 2 will really make that much of a difference. And I guess same with number 11, Big Eye. This card was actually limited for the OCG, and basically, and I completely closed out. Wow. Like I was saying, basically, Big Eye was limited for the OCG, so I guess they're going to see if putting it to 2 would do anything. Brother of the Firefish Rooster. This was limited in place of Brother of the Firefish Spirit in the TCG, where it's limited over here. So they're going to put that to 2 just to see what happens. Monster Gate. Now, I'm not sure about this, because from what I understand, a deck, the Infernoid deck, can abuse this card to hell. Well, get it? Because, oh yeah, now I'm not going any further than that. But yeah, Monster Gate and Infernoid seem to be insane with reasoning. So we'll just have to see what happens, because I'm actually kind of worried about that. Doing Unlimited, Evil Storm Ophion. So yeah, it's back to 3 over there. It was limited, then it went to 2, then it's back at 3. I guess it's because Evil Swarm haven't done anything. I don't know. It's kind of weird, really, like what they're doing with this. Like, this is a card that, yeah, it's going to be limited, and then it's like, well, it's not. They're not doing anything, so put it to 3. Chronomaly never this. This card used to. I believe this card was limited at one time because Chronomaly Artifact was a really strong deck during the time, you know, it was released and stuff like that. So I guess because, like, well, you know, Artifact Moral Attack is at 1 over there. It's probably not going to be as good. And Chronomaly obviously can't really function that well without it. And the TCG still doesn't have this card. So who knows when we're getting that. Card Trooper. Not sure how I feel about that. I mean, I guess it's kind of like, well, are people really going to play Troop Dupe Scoop anymore? Like, are people going to bring that back now that it's a 3? I mean, it's a possibility. And maybe it won't be done that often now, because back in the day, that was a really degenerate deck. Because it's just like, Card Trooper, Machine Dupe, limited removal, and all this other stuff. OTK. I mean, it was pretty silly. And even if you didn't OTK, you know, limited removal would destroy your monsters, and you would draw 3 cards. And you'd be milling your deck out a lot because, you know, you'd be using cards like Overload Fusion, you know, and to summon out Chimera Attack, Over Dragon, and stuff like that. Yeah, that sounds pretty stupid, doesn't it? And yeah, that's kind of the idea. TG Striker, yeah, that definitely needed to happen. Tragodia, we don't have 3 Tragodia yet, and maybe we will. I don't know. I don't know who's gonna play 3, but yeah, it's a 3. Lonefire Blossom. Wow. Like, are you serious? I know that plants aren't really doing anything, but 3 Lonefire? That's kind of crazy. Like, I've said this time and time again, and I'll keep saying it time and time again. I consider Lonefire Blossom one of the best support cards for a type of monster in the game. Like, honestly, I think I definitely keep your eye on that. I mean, we'll have to see if 3 Lonefire actually does anything in the OCG. Hieratic Seal Convocation. I mean, I guess Hieratics aren't really doing anything. And the Hieratic Dragon Ruler variant isn't a thing right now, so I guess they could put the card at 3 and it wouldn't matter. Hero Lives. I mean, I guess because heroes. They're obviously an extra Hero Lives will help. And Ojamatria. So yeah, that's the list. And now we're gonna get into the meaty part of this video. And I really said meaty, didn't I? I really said that. Let's move right along. I'll put a timestamp for, I'll put a timestamp for this and this. So yeah, bear back in just a moment. I'm not gonna cut, but I'm just gonna go over to the next thing. Okay, so go over to the Duelist Forbidden Cards Errata. Now, we're going to go over the Erratas, and this is where things are going to get a little bit crazy because, like I said, this is not as simple as like Catapult Turtle or Dark Strike Fighter, where they just got a slight change to their effect, to make them once per turn. Now, this is like completely changing how the card is worded and everything. Let's go over this first. This is like the granddaddy of them all. Chaos Ever Dragon, Envoy of the End. Here's a Dark Dragon effect, level 8, obviously. 3,000 attack, 2,500 defense. Cannot be normal summoned / set. Must be special summoned from your hand by banishing 1 light and 1 dark monster from your graveyard. It cannot be special summoned by other ways. During the turn you activate this card's effect, you cannot activate other effects. Once per turn, you can pay 1,000 life points, send all cards on the field and in both players' hands to the graveyard. Then inflict 300 damage to your opponent for each of your opponent's cards sent by this effect. Now, yeah, biggest change there is the fact that, well, you can't activate other effects the turn you use it. So if you use this effect, you cannot abuse it with any other effects. You can't abuse it with like Burning Abyss. Well, the OCG doesn't have Burning Abyss yet, so it won't matter. But I'm just saying, if they did have Burning Abyss, they obviously can't use the Burning Abyss effects when this is resolving and stuff like that. And you can't chain any trap cards. And you can't use any trap cards prior to this effect because then you can't even use it. So, yeah, that's one thing. And also, this particular right here, this was changed to basically make it a NoMe monster. Now we have two different. Now for people who don't know, NoMe and semi-NoMe are basically monsters that you can't normal summon or set and have some kind of particular special summoning condition. And this used to be, you know, a semi-NoMe monster where you summon it by its you obviously can't normal summon or set, and if you special summoned it by its condition, you would be able to special summon it with another card like Monster Reborn, Call the Haunted later on. But you had to properly special summon it by its condition first. Here, it doesn't matter. You have to summon it by this condition, and that's it. So, yeah, and obviously the effect you can only use once per turn. So, then actually, because of this Errata, this basically says if your opponent has Effect Veiler or whatever, you can't stop it, because if you're activating the effect, you can't obviously use other effects. So you can't even activate any other effects in response to another card's effect. But what you can do is, if you have a card like Mind Drain already active from a previous turn, you could essentially just summon this guy, and then your opponent can't use Effect Veiler because Mind Drain keeps the monster effects in hand from activating. So yeah, that's definitely a way you can play around this, but yeah, that requires a little bit of setup, and actually I wonder if people are actually going to do that, because yeah, that's basically how it goes. Now, I believe this changed as well, the damage part. I believe what it used to say, it inflicted 300 damage for each of the cards sent to the grave by this effect. Now it says 300 damage to your opponent for each of their cards. I believe it counted your cards too, which made it even worse, because you could just potentially steal a game off of that burn damage alone without even having to attack. So yeah, Chaos over Dragunov Boy at the end. That's his Errata. Yeah, you can see how drastic this is compared to like Catapult Turtle. It's like a completely different card now, even though it's actually, well, actually, this now, okay, actually, never mind. This isn't as bad as like the other ones. Like, this is very close to the original with obvious slight changes. Now, this though, this is completely different. This is completely changing a card altogether, and I know people hate this. People hate erratas like this because you may as it's basically not the same exact card anymore. But it doesn't bother me that much. I just find it strange at some points. But yeah, Ring of Destruction. Yeah, freaking Ring of Destruction. You can only activate one Ring of Destruction per turn. During your opponent's turn, target one face-up monster your opponent controls whose attack is lower than or equal to your opponent's life points. Destroy that face-up monster, and if you do, you take damage equal to that monster's original attack. Then, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the damage you took. Yeah, this is quite different from the original. The original was just like, oh, destroy one face-up monster, and both players take damage equal to its attack points. And it wasn't original attack either. If it was boosted by something else, you could just inflict the full damage if they're powered up. So, yeah, that's kind of crazy. Like, for one, you can only use one. You can only activate one per turn now, and you like basically because of how this is worded. If your opponent has like, let's say they have like 2,700 life points, and they have a Blackluster Soldier Envoy at the end, or Chaos Emperor Dragon, because this card's basically going to come back now. If you activate Ring of Destruction on either of those cards, well, you can't. That's the thing. You can't do that because it basically has to be, their attack has to be lower than or equal to their life points. And obviously, if the monster has more attack points than the amount of life points they have left, you can't even use it. So yeah, that definitely, I mean, it's still playable, but you definitely have to keep that in mind. Now, you can't just go steal a game after, a battling, especially because you can only activate it during your opponent's turn. So you can't like swing with everybody in the Ring of Destruction and end the game. Yeah. Crush Card Virus. Now, Crush Card Virus is interesting because this card has been banned in the TCG and OCG for a long time, and for good reason, because it's arguably the most powerful of them all. Now, this got errata'd as well, or completely changed, I don't even know. Tribute one dark monster you control with 1,000 or less attack, check your opponent's hand and all monsters they control, and destroy all monsters with 1,500 or more attack. Then your opponent can destroy up to 3 monsters with 1,500 or more attack from their deck. After you activated this card, all damage your opponent takes until the end of the next turn becomes 0. So, yeah, like, this is completely different too. Now, what's different here is that your opponent, like, what usually happens is you check your opponent's hand, all monsters that you control, and every card they drew, and you would destroy all the monsters with 1,500 or more attack points. Yeah, the part where your opponent draws a card and shows it to you to confirm that if it's a monster or not, that part's gone. Instead, it's basically like, well, after you destroy the monsters they have on the hand and the field that match the criteria of this card, your opponent can destroy up to 3 monsters with the 1,500 more attack in the deck. Now, some people say that's really broken. Now, to an extent, like this core effect, like this part here, is still pretty brutal. But this can kind of backfire on you now because your opponent can destroy 3 monsters in the deck, 1,500 more attack points. Now, here's the thing: like there are monsters that work when destroyed even in the deck, like Lightning Darkness Dragon or Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys or Fire King Avatar Garunix. Like, you do not want your opponent destroying them. You do not want to be destroying those cards because, especially from the deck, because it basically lets them get a free effect off, and that can actually backfire on you. Just saying. And I mean, if you're playing against like Shaddoll, like this card can kind of hurt you too. Like even because they're being sent to the grave. Well, they're being technically sent to the grave. Even if you're destroying them by a card effect, they're still going to get an effect. So you really have to be careful when playing this card now. Like, yeah, the fact that your opponent can destroy monsters in the deck and potentially screw you over because, well, you're going to nuke my hand and field. Well, I'm going to send monsters that are going to pretty much trigger when destroyed and completely wreck you. And your opponent takes no further damage until the end of the next turn. So that's the thing too. So you can't just nuke their field and attack for game. Can't do that anymore. Temple of the Kings. Yeah, this card, from what I understand, was never even allowed in the TCG. Like when it came out, it was banned. So yeah, that's a thing. So the Errata is basically just, you can only use each effect one turn now. So you can't abuse the first effect as often as you were able to do back then, back when you were, maybe if you were allowed to do that. So yeah, you get one track card you control during the turn is set. You can only use that once per turn, so you can't abuse it multiple times. Exchange of the Spirit. Again, I was not around when this was a thing, and I'm so glad I never had to face it. But yeah, Exchange of the Spirit. You can activate 1 Exchange of the Spirit per duel. Yeah, that's interesting. If each player has 15 or more cards in their graveyard, pay 1,000 life points. Both players swap cards in their decks with cards in their graveyard, then shuffle the decks. Yeah, basically, yeah, say goodbye to the freaking FDKs because now you and your opponent have to have 50 cards. It can't just be you. Your opponent has to have 15 more cards in the grave as well. So this will be dead until late in the game. Unless you're playing a deck that basically focuses on milling cards from both of your decks really quickly and stuff like that. So basically you basically can't pull this off on turn 1. At least not unless you could figure out a way to make a deck entirely around this and you could do it turn 1. But I don't think you could do that, especially when cards like Painful Choice are banned as well, so you can't particularly use those to help you out. And finally, Sinister Serpent. Yeah, no, a lot of people talk about good old Sinister Serpent and how he can come back in the TCG because, I mean, clearly might not do anything, am I right? Well, at its core, the way the card is, and I understand why it's banned, even though I think it may be kind of silly, I understand why they're keeping it banned at that point because, I mean, in similar veins, decks like Burning Abyss and stuff like that, it's free discard. And the thing is, the effect that activates in the standby phase, it could tend to trigger multiple times. So I mean, if you go standby phase, activate Phoenix Wind Blast, discard Sinister Serpent, you would be able to just put it back into your hand right on that same standby phase. Kind of though, I think there were some other cards like that, like Truma Frog or something like that. But yeah, basically, you would be able to kind of abuse it in that way, but I don't know. Some people argue it wouldn't really do anything. And with this Errata, I don't think it will. It's definitely, you definitely have to be kind of careful when playing it now. You can only use the effect of Sinister Serpent once per turn. During your standby phase, if this card is in your graveyard, you can add this card to your hand. So that has not changed, except you can only use the effect once per turn now. During your opponent's next end phase, banish one Sinister Serpent from your graveyard. Yeah. This, and now some people are like, well, they didn't need to do that. I mean, they probably could have came back just with the once per turn effect and they'd be fine. I guess the OCG didn't think this. I think they're still kind of worried that this card is super broken. Thus, they had to put this clause this effect at the very end of it. So basically, if you're thinking about disrupting your opponent by using a card like Phoenix Wind Blast, and discarding Sinister Serpent and then getting it back to your hand during your next demo phase, yeah, you're not going to be able to do that because during their end phase, you got to banish the Sinister Serpent. And from what I understand, Sinister Serpent is at 1 over there now. It's going to be at 1. So basically, yeah, you have to be really careful when playing this. You basically have to what? I don't know. Like, you basically have to do it during your draw phase and standby phase if you somehow get him in the graveyard. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, I understand that they're trying to nerf it, but at the same time, that seems really difficult to play now because you basically have to do it during a time where it wouldn't end up getting banished, but you would still be able to add it to your hand from the grave. And heck, you can't even go and defend yourself with it because it'll just get banished during the end phase, during the next end phase. So, yeah, that's insane. Like, wow, OCG, I don't know what is you doing, but we'll see how this turns out. We'll see just how these are gonna affect the game. I still think Chaos Emperor Dragon is ridiculous. Now I know that his Errata makes him somewhat easier to deal with. But at the same time, that effect, when resolved, it is brutal, man. It is brutal. Now, obviously, it's not going to be as abusable with, like, Yada. Well, that's obviously banned, but you can't use it with floaters like Sangin or Burning Abyss because, you know, you wouldn't be able to get their effects because you can only use this effect and no other effects during the turn. So, yeah, like, let me know what you guys think about this. I know this is only for the OCG, but this is some crazy stuff. And heck, this may apply in this may apply in the TCG in the future, possibly. So we definitely have to watch out because it's possible that in the future we might go through a similar ordeal. Maybe that, or the OCG just has all the fun, right? But yeah, like, it is no lie. It's just crazy how that kind of works out. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.